I know many people have been intrigued about the theme for this year's message for World Day of Communications. The decision to talk about the family initially led people to think that this was another letter about families. That's an obvious enough conclusion, but really there's something richer going on here. This is a letter in which we're invited to think about communications, about the dynamics of communications, and to apply the fundamental lessons that most of us will have learned in our own families of origin. The first point I would say is very important is within families we're communicating all the time. We're communicating not just to exchange information, but essentially to build up the relationships, to maintain the unity of the family, to negotiate common problems, to find a way of engaging one another fully so that we can come up with family solutions to family issues. And I think that's a very rich idea because when you think about it, most of us, our basic communication skills, we learn them in the family. It's in our families that we learn our first words, but we learn them in the context of relationships. Very often the first word of any child would be mama or papa, which already shows this intrinsic link between the desire to express oneself and the desire to have a sense of relationship. I think the first and primary lesson we can take from this letter this year is that we need to focus that communications, when it's at its best, will always help to build up relationships. So the challenge a little bit is to move beyond the idea of the natural family, the family of origin of each of us, but to think about the broader world as a family and to see how the skills we learn in the area of communications in our own families can help us then to communicate better and to build together a better human family. And those skills are inclusivity. In families, we have to learn very early on to make room for others. It's not all about us. The nice thing is that in families, very often we are loved unconditionally. We get a primary experience of what it is like to be loved by God. But families also remind us that we're not the center of the world. We're not the only one. We learn to engage others, to take account of their views, but we do it in a context of love. And that's a good lesson for all of us in the world as we try to work together to communicate, to engage problems that face all of us. We try to do it with that sense of a desire to build community, of a desire to maintain unity. One other nice thing is in Ireland we often say family or home is where they have to take you in when nobody else wants you. And that's maybe an invitation for us as a church to have the sense of the church as a family that's open to others, that takes account of their needs, of their desires, that never closes its doors. I think Pope Francis has constantly been reminded us of the family as home, as having the doors open, about being even willing to take risks in that desire to be inclusive. So again, the reality of our own families reminding us how the church as family can have that sense of inclusivity and welcoming for everybody. And there's a nice idea there too, that we learn to be attentive to those who are easily forgotten. There's a nice passage where it says we have to learn within our families to include those who are slightly different or those who have different abilities. I think a challenge again for the church, but for all human societies, is to ensure that our forms of communication are open to those who have different abilities and different ways of being. I think that's a very important challenge as we talk about inclusion in the digital world. Are we ensuring that the platforms we develop, that the services we offer online are truly available to everybody, so that we have a sense that our whole world can benefit by having the benefits of the views and the opinions and the ideas of others. So again, back, it's our family keeping alive this sense of inclusivity. I think families also, we know what it is like to have little disputes and upsets, but we have those debates and we have those discussions, often very strong and very clear and very straightforward in our different views. But in the context of family, there's always the sense we're going to resolve this by way of love. We're always going to find a way of bringing this to a happy ending. And there again, for all of us in the world community, to try and have that, let's build together a better human family using the great gifts of communications.